Maurice!
What's the other end?
Police department! Look at this.
Oh, there's water running.
No, what the?
Yeah.
What is that?
I'm sorry, you were on the other half.
It began as a routine welfare check in a quiet Ohio neighborhood. But what officers discovered behind the locked door would haunt them forever.
As soon as you got in the apartment, there was a giant pool of blood in the kitchen. Looked like somebody had been dragged through the apartment.
Inside the home, they found a victim stabbed 13 times, dragged along blood-soaked floors, and they had just one clue, a single shoe print, which offered more questions than answers.
This was going to be my last homicide case before I retired. And it was slipping through my fingers.
Until one call flipped the entire investigation on its head.
The only thing that he said, he thinks that he killed somebody.
What the detectives uncovered next would shock the town and reveal a secret no one could have imagined. On August 6, 2017, a 911 call from Lakewood, Ohio, set events in motion surrounding 53-year-old Maurice K. Goins.
205 and 226.
5.
Can you do a welfare check on the number 401? You're just going to check on Maurice Goins. He has not been seen or heard from in a week, saying he hadn't shown up to work.
Officers from the Lakewood Police Department were dispatched immediately to conduct the said welfare check.
It would be a simple welfare check, make sure everybody was okay, and go from there.
Waiting for them was the man who had reported Maurice Goins missing, a friend named Morley. He was ready to lead them straight to Maurice's apartment.
He called me every day. Last day I heard from him was Monday night. Was the last day. He lives in an apartment right here. That door right there, apartment 4.
Come on over here.
But yeah, hit this button right here. I've been ringing it.
Number 4A?
Yeah.
Can you get us in here?
I mean Thursday.
You want to grab his info, or you can just wait in the hallway for a minute?
Got me.
That's downstairs?
Yeah, all right.
To the left?
Yeah, the last door.
Maurice!
When knocking failed to elicit a response, the officers stepped outside to explore alternative entry points to the apartment.
Oh, check outside. These are his?
Yeah.
Hello? Lakewood Police! Hello? You got that? There's nothing really to...
Nope. Number 5 will be here on the way to South Detroit.
Go in.
That's more on my mind.
When multiple calls from the police went unanswered, they decided to break into Maurice's house through the window. The house seemed ordinary on the outside, but what lay within would haunt the officers forever.
Die.
Five, we're in front of 1433. What's the other end?
Police department! This doesn't look good.
I kind of just immediately realized that there's something wrong. And I immediately said, yeah, I need to let someone else in here just because it's not going to be safe, or I don't know if there's anybody else in here right now.
Officer Smykowski's eye had already caught something eerie, and so he let the other officers in through the front door and pointed his finger at the floor.
Look at this.
Oh, there's water running.
No, what the?
Yeah.
What is that?
I'm sorry, you were on the other half.
Just be careful when
Okay,
you step.
just here.
As soon as you got in the apartment, there was a giant pool of blood in the kitchen. Looked like somebody had been dragged through the apartment.
But it seems like the officers were not alone in that apartment. They suspected someone was trying to cover their evil tracks.
Ready?
It's not good for sure.
That is not good. Did you get that?
Here, let me step across.
Go ahead. Good?
Yeah. Just check the water off.
There was a bathroom that was right off the kitchen, and you could hear the water running. So that kind of took our attention from, is there actually somebody still in this apartment? Did they hear us knocking and then they just forgot to shut the water off?
Maurice's disappearance had taken an unexpected turn. Soon, they were about to make a discovery that sent chills down their spines when they noticed an opened bedroom door.
Dude, shot?
He's dead. I don't know if he's shot or not. He's dead.
16 center spot up here.
There was a body laying in the bedroom. It appeared he was face down. I certainly won't forget it, being my first day here and my first homicide. Definitely the images that I saw that day will, forever stick with me.
As soon as the case turned from a welfare check to a homicide, additional officers began to gather around what was now a crime scene.
I've been on many scenes, death scenes, and unfortunately, this one was very gruesome in comparison.
That's what it looks like.
It was a particularly gruesome crime scene. There's quite a bit of blood in every area of the apartment.
Come over here. You start seeing when I came down through here, I turned around, hopped down, I see this, and there was blood drag.
We found a knife left next to the victim's head. It was obvious that he had been stabbed in the neck.
I'm gonna do the end of the knife.
Right.
There were some puncture and incise wounds to the left side and front of his neck right here.
During their search of the house, an ID card confirmed the identity of the victim.
What's this guy's name?
Maurice Goins. Yeah, Goins.
Maurice had been murdered in one of the most sickening ways these officers had ever seen. The entire house was covered in blood. Maurice's body was found in the bedroom, but the even more gruesome scene in the living room looked like it was the place where he could have been brutally stabbed to death.
Break this stuff down.
It almost looks like this is how it was.
I'm just saying, I don't think these pillows move, because you can see there's blood here and there's blood here, but there's no blood underneath this cushion beyond where this blood.
Yeah, I think everything happened here.
It appeared that the stabbing began or occurred on that sectional sofa because there was a large pool of blood there. And then there were drag marks indicating that the body was removed from the sofa and then dragged throughout the apartment into the other room.
Amid this bloody catastrophe was hidden their first and most important clue that could solve the case right away.
You can see footprints in there.
Yes.
There were numerous shoe prints left in the blood, and those all had a very distinct tread pattern on them, consistent with a Converse Chuck Taylor All-Star sneaker.
Before the cops could find out why this happened and who was responsible, they had to find out who Maurice Goins was. They began to talk with the people who knew him.
Last time that I had seen him, he had brought me a dinner. I had no idea that would have been the last conversation that I would have had with him.
The investigators soon learned that Maurice was a friendly, well-liked man who had no shortage of friends. The real challenge, however, was identifying the one person who didn't share those friendly feelings for him. They needed answers that could only be given by those closest to him, starting with Morley.
What kind of relationship you got with this guy? How do you know him? We used to work together many years ago. Because I don't work there anymore. I met him through there and we stayed constant. Like, we was friends, but like, we talked and everything like that on the phone and stuff. He used to go watch them play baseball and stuff like that.
Okay.
He was actually kind of fidgety, and he appeared almost nervous, or like you could see that he didn't seem settled.
No reason someone would want to come over here and rob him, steal anything from him you can think of?
I know he had a flat screen TV in the living room, I know that, and that's all I think he had, really.
Morley was the person who had reported Maurice missing in the first place, but there was something in Morley's demeanor that smelled of deception and that did not sit well with Detective Smykowski.
Even though there was no way to actually suspect him of committing this crime, we documented his shoes, the size of his shoes, photographed him, what he was wearing, and just made sure we documented what he had in the event something were to change where maybe now he became a suspect.
While one team of police was investigating people around Maurice, another was analyzing and making strange discoveries at the crime scene. One of the most shocking and unexpected revelations at this time was nothing in the house except for a TV was missing.
Okay, this TV, that seems to match this, like, stereo down here.
It's a Panasonic TV remote, so I'm assuming your missing TV is a Panasonic.
There was an RCA cable behind there. It almost looked like the suspect, when they stole the television, may have grabbed it by the cord and yanked very hard on that just to get it out of there quickly and left in a hurry. That television was probably one of the few things that could easily be stolen and sold quickly, either on the street or at a pawn shop or somewhere else, to get some quick money.
The TV was stolen, yet there was a reason the police were not considering it a burglary.
But the door was left dead bolted. You know, your typical burglar doesn't particularly care about locking up after themselves. So it seemed a little strange.
The cops made a completely unrelated yet strange discovery when they found a red walking cane under the couch. This peculiar evidence seemed like a message to be decoded to identify the profile of the perpetrator. To analyze, the same detectives were back at their quarters. They began questioning Maurice's neighbors and friends in a more formal setting, but they didn't realize they were closing in on a breakthrough that would change everything.
Just a shame that happens, you know?
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah.
This elderly woman was Maurice's neighbor who lived in the unit above his apartment, and as she did her chores that fateful morning, she witnessed something bizarre.
And he was carrying that thing on. I guess they never gave it no thought. I just assumed the guy was selling it, you know?
Right.
So the guy that you saw, was it a white guy or a black guy?
He was a white guy.
Okay.
You know, then you wonder, is there somebody in the building? You know?
This was a big moment for the investigation, and so we were getting pretty excited that, you know, whoever this was who walked out of the apartment with his television is our probable suspect here.
Although police had been successful in drawing a rough profile of the killer early on in the investigation, they still could not nab the suspect in the following days. There was widespread fear of the man who had brutally killed Maurice over a TV.
After Mo's death, and after the officers and the detectives said that they were unable to find anybody at this point, it made me uneasy and a little leery, you know, walking around, and I would look at everybody, you know, really hard, and I would be, you know, concerned for my well-being.
The fear and shock had quickly turned neighbors into suspects. No one could believe a television could spark such terror. The detectives zeroed in on a critical question. Where had the man gone with the stolen TV? In the meantime, the detectives got an intel from the same neighbor that the maintenance guy of the building could have something to do with this crime.
So the guy that you saw, was it a white guy or a black guy?
He was a white guy.
Okay.
The investigators weren't searching blindly anymore. They knew exactly where to dig.
She had also claimed that the maintenance man for the building was in the laundry room right next to Maurice's apartment door. He was in there fixing the hot water tank.
It wasn't long before this maintenance man found himself sitting in the interrogation chair.
There you go. Just have a seat on the blue chair. I'll be right there on the ground.
He remembered the morning. He remembered being there changing the hot water tank. We explained to him what the upstairs resident had told us. Well, specifically, what I'm trying to jar your memory on is that she's downstairs doing laundry when the problem occurs with the hot water tank, and that you come there to kind of check things out, and she's in the laundry room the same time you're in the laundry room there with her.
The maintenance man could fill in the gaps the elderly woman had left. They were relying heavily on the information that he could provide.
She says at that particular time that the two of you were there in the laundry room, some male comes out of Mr. Goins' apartment carrying a television.
That didn't happen.
That didn't happen?
Nope.
You didn't see anybody come out with the television?
I was there even after she walked away. There was nobody in the hallway that I know of.
Everyone seemed to remember a different version of what happened that day. The day was drawing to a close, and their knowledge about the perpetrator remained frustratingly limited. The detectives were aware that they needed a new lead to go forward, and what lay hidden in the autopsy report would be a game-changing discovery by the next day.
The report indicated that there was 11 wounds between the head and neck, 3 wounds to the chest, and 11 total on the hands. So obviously the hands to us indicated some defensive wounds. The two major wounds were one to the jugular and one to the larynx. Obviously this was a brutal scene. The act itself of stabbing somebody is a personal act, close space act. So that led us to believe that Maurice knew who had stabbed him.
The autopsy report had left the detectives certain that it was not a burglary gone wrong. The kind of wounds Maurice's body carried were offensive and not accidental. So they brought in Maurice's colleagues from the local restaurant he worked at in order to find out if anyone had it out for Maurice.
So you were here to talk about Mr. Goins?
Yes. So I have information. I don't know if it will be useful or if it won't
Everything's
be.
useful.
It really got me thinking. I started thinking about all the memories that we had, and when I worked with him, we were really close. He would come in and he would tell me about his personal life and his life with his unofficial boyfriend, and we'd share stories back and forth. And one thing that really stuck out to me and that bothered me was, speaking of the situation and the situation with him and his unofficial boyfriend and his unofficial boyfriend's wife.
What's his unofficial boyfriend's name?
The name of his unofficial boyfriend was about to be the last thing the cops ever expected. It was Morley, the concerned friend who not only reported him missing, but also told the police his relationship with Maurice was that of an ex-colleague.
What kind of relationship you got with this guy? How do you know him?
We used to work together many years ago, because I don't work there anymore.
It all made sense because they were circling back to the person they first found suspicious.
I definitely know what he looks like. He used to come up here and there. But there were several times when we were speaking, and we were speaking about, if, his wife never found out.
Then, the colleague would share with the investigators a piece of news that would get their noses to the ground immediately.
There were several times, jokingly, he said, if something were to happen to me, who did it. So that really stuck out to me. And as I kept thinking, I just kept imagining his face and him saying that. And it really, really bothered me.
As they absorbed his colleague's words, they felt they were finally closing in on a potential motive.
He made that comment more than once.
Now, why would he say something like that? Was it because their relationship was violent?
No, it was because nobody knew about their relationship. And I could sense from him that he knew that it was a risk that he was taking. But it just really concerned me. Now that this had happened, it makes you think that could be a motive for something to happen to him. And then I kept thinking, okay, well, what if I'm the only person that knows about his relationship?
Right.
So I really felt that it would be useful to at least come talk about it.
There's some truth to it.
Exactly. They don't say it just because. They say it because they know some type of risk is involved in what they're doing.
The investigators had hit a jackpot of information. For the first time in Maurice's case, they had a direction. Did Morley steal the TV, murder his friend, and then notify the police, knowing it would make him seem like the least likely suspect?
Things were left out, and it was puzzling to us as to why you would leave something like that out. They seemed like they were important things that we should have known at the time. So we had this person that called in this welfare check come back for another interview. And at this point, we confronted this person with our knowledge of this relationship.
So I appreciate you volunteering coming back in, because we got certain things, or just get your story in. You said you talked to him Monday night.
I talked to him Monday night.
The investigators first aimed to find flaws in Morley's earlier statements and make him reach a point where the confrontation made the most impact, and then it was the showtime.
And I'm not judging here. You and Mo were partners, sexual partners.
Yeah.
You guys, okay?
Yeah.
You didn't tell me that either.
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah, you forgot to mention that. I just want to confirm that.
Yeah, but since I got married last August, we just was best friends on the telephone.
You didn't hook up too much after you got married?
Yeah, we never hooked up too much after.
Did you though? Did you hook up at all after you got married?
No, after I got married.
The investigators ended the interview there, but only after they had secured a DNA sample from Morley. The stop at Morley seemed like a near brush for this case because his results did not come back positive. Days into the investigation, and they still lacked any solid lead. Out of leads and starved for information, detectives now turned to another friend of Maurice's. They were after any piece of information that could lead them to the missing puzzle piece in Maurice's murder.
Talk to you outside for a second? Come outside. We don't want to talk in front of everybody, actually.
I'll make sure I'm back.
Okay. All right. Side door? Okay.
All right. You know Maurice?
Yes, Goins? Why?
He's passed.
How?
Somebody did him. My question is, when's the last time you talked to him?
Oh.
This is why we don't want to talk to you inside.
I haven't heard from him and I wondered why. Holy.
The woman accompanied the investigators back to the station where she was to deliver any assisting information. But there was a catch.
So this person came in to be interviewed, but unfortunately she was not able to make arrangements for childcare and ended up having to have her son with her during this interview, which made it a difficult interview and delicate interview given the types of questions that had to be asked regarding her knowledge of Maurice's personal life.
We're shooting in the dark here so far.
This is crazy.
Yeah. So we're kind of still trying to figure things out. So maybe fill in some of the blanks, fill in some of the holes and some background and stuff. I'll tread lightly here because of the present company.
Yeah.
We have since learned that he had multiple friends.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he was a multiple
Okay.
friend person. There was one, a dude in a truck.
The name that stuck out to her was another friend of Maurice's. The only thing she remembered about this friend was his first name, Dan.
So there's a name Dan that's out there, and we find out that they were going to have a candlelight vigil for Maurice. We basically staked out the vigil. We thought chances are pretty good that she might know who these other people are.
And so the next day, the investigators brought the woman back to take a look at the vigil and identify not only Dan, but other participants as well. For all they knew, the killer could have been present at the vigil itself, under the mask of a grieving friend.
Basically what I have is just a video of the vigil, and all we want you to do is just kind of, if you could just tell us who you know that's in the video kind of a thing.
That's me.
That's your son, right?
That's my son, yeah. He was a big part of his life. That is...
There's a part where it zooms in, so we'll just go to that.
Where are those two guys?
That's his ex. They
Who's
were
ex?
together, Maurice's.
Do you know when the last time they were, like, an item?
It's been a while.
So after showing the woman the video of the vigil, and she was able to identify everyone at the vigil, but when asked, she did not see Dan. So we concluded that this person just didn't attend the vigil.
For a brief moment, it seemed like yet another setback in this challenging case, frustrating the officers and crushing the hopes of Maurice's friends.
Mo wasn't aggressive at all. He was quite thin and frail. And I always teased him about it. I said, go make you a sandwich. Go eat a meal. He's like, I'm fine. I eat all the time. I said, I've never seen you eat anything. He was a very nice guy. I couldn't think of anybody that would want to harm him.
But then, the investigators uncovered a detail that would prove to be a bombshell for the entire investigation.
One of the people that we had not been able to talk with were upstairs neighbors of Maurice's. Guy's name just happened to be Dan. The jailer came in one morning and said, hey, weren't you trying to interview this Dan guy from up at the Madison murder? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, he's in jail. He's here on I think he was there on a contempt of court or whatever the case may be.
The officers were about to stumble upon a chilling discovery.
And then he tells me, and you're never going to guess what kind of shoes he has. And I'm like, let me guess. Sure enough, they were Chuck Taylor.
The case had suddenly picked up speed because these were the very same shoes that were imprinted in Maurice's blood back at the crime scene. What happened next made Dan even more of a suspicious man. He refused to meet with the detectives and answer their questions.
So I would bring in his girlfriend who lives in the apartment with him, and we talked to her. Are you aware of that something happened in the building?
I know somebody died.
Right. Do you know anything about that?
No. I didn't even know it happened until I came home that day.
What kind of shoes did he get arrested with this morning?
Red Chucks.
Although Dan's girlfriend was certain that neither she nor her boyfriend had ever even had a conversation with Maurice, investigators were sure they were finally on the right track because of how unlikely it was to find the killer's shoes on the feet of a person who was at a very close proximity to Maurice. But the forensic report would reveal something so shocking that their hopes would be shattered.
Everybody's feet wear a shoe differently. When you walk through something and you leave a pattern behind, your pattern will be completely different than the exact same shoe that somebody else is wearing. And Dan was not the person who left the bloody footprints behind at Maurice's kitchen.
Once again, the chances to find Maurice's killer were snatched away from the investigators. The hopelessness was catching up to them, and they feared the worst. They might never solve the case.
This was going to be my last homicide case before I retired. And it was slipping through my fingers.
For the next 10 months, Detective Miller chased leads that went nowhere. With retirement just around the corner, he faced the unsettling prospect of ending his career with an unsolved homicide. But then they would receive an unexpected and unlikely call that would change everything.
I'm Detective Miller. I've talked to you on the phone. This is Detective Lianza, my partner.
All right, nice to meet you.
Detective Moran of the neighboring Cleveland Police Department had a confidential informant in the prison, someone who had information regarding Maurice's killing. A meeting was arranged between the informant and the investigators from Lakewood.
Listen, I don't know whether this is true or not. I'm just telling you what I was told.
Okay.
He told me about this months ago. I just didn't know who it was.
Okay.
You know, so we were talking, you know, just having a regular conversation, you know, and then he tells me that he killed somebody. So I'm like, wow, what happened? And in short, as he explained it to me, someone was trying to stick him, so he grabbed a knife and stuck them.
Mm-hmm.
This person ends up dying. So it's like, who was it? He said it was right off of Detroit Avenue, and that it was a black guy.
Okay.
He didn't say how he looked or what his age was, just that it was a black guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that he was trying to rob him, trying to take his money for some drugs or whatever.
Okay.
Never really said anything about like where he had stabbed him, just that he was bloody and that he had to get out his clothes or whatever.
The story that they told me was very credible. We went from being stone cold dead in the water to going 100 miles an hour within a day.
A fellow inmate had talked with the informant. The investigators were at the edge of their seats to know who this man was.
What was the guy's name?
Charles Muscatelli.
4 hours down.
I was astonished because I had literally just dealt with him on the street. I think it was a petty theft call at one of our businesses like 3 days prior.
What's your last name?
Hospital.
How do you spell it?
Hey guys. C-A-T-E-L.
And your first name?
Charles. I'm on probation.
Let's see, you look familiar.
We had dealt with Charles a few times. He was very mild-mannered during every one of those things. Not aggressive on the street with us at all, in any way, not just physical, but verbal, always compliant, never a problem. There was no indication whatsoever he was a violent person.
Yeah, of course.
Charles A. Muscatello was not an unfamiliar name. He was a frequent bother for the investigators and had been arrested often, but all for petty crimes. If this was their man in Maurice's case, he had taken a huge leap. Detectives were quick to find out the truth, and so Charles's estranged wife was soon warming the interrogation chair for any tips she could provide.
Are you and Charles like legally married?
Yes,
Okay.
we are legally married.
You're just separated at the moment?
Yeah, but not legally separated.
That's fine. I mean, you're just not living together right now. Okay.
At first, it looked like the relationship between Charles and his wife was still alive, even after the informal separation, and they might not get much. But then the wife revealed something that would surprise them.
Tell us what he kind of said.
The only thing that he said, he thinks that he killed somebody. And I'm like, yeah, right. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's like, oh, I got jumped. You know, he got into a physical altercation with somebody, you know, and that was it. Charlie's lied so many times about things that's happened to him. You never know when to believe him.
Basically, he just in passing said, oh, I might have killed somebody, but never any details.
No. You know how many times he's said that before, and here in the end, ended up being a lie? Like, he would come home and, like, he sold our son's dog for drugs. He came home and said that somebody robbed him for that dog. I ended up finding out later on that he hurt himself
just to make
it look that way.
Suddenly, Charles looked capable of far more than what the detectives had thought so at first. However, the wife lacked any solid information about Charles's involvement in Maurice's case, or whether he possessed the stolen TV. But when she brought up the object Charles carried, the detectives knew they were about to uncover something crucial, the very item found at the murder scene.
The people that we were, like, staying with kind of at that time, there was this old man, his name was George, and he used that cane on a daily basis. And for like a few days went by, and everybody's like, well, where's the cane at, Charlie? You know, somebody took the cane out of the house. And then hearing that he did have it, I mean, that's kind of messed up.
All these cumulative things regarding Muscatello's lifestyle and the things that he was capable of, selling his son's dog and, you know, being a thief. I would not invite him over to my house. But that doesn't make him, you know, a violent criminal.
The investigators had scraps of evidence, but nothing concrete. Bringing Charles in was a gamble, a make-or-break moment. With the clock ticking and no room for error, the interrogators knew they had one shot to crack him. Failure wasn't an option.
Charles, I'm not trying to insult your intelligence, okay? But part the title in yellow. Will you read it out loud to me just so I know you know how to read English?
Before we ask you any question, you must understand your rights.
Okay, great. I'm going to read the rest of you. Just follow along with me, okay? You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to talk to an attorney for advice before we ask you any questions, and to have an attorney present during any questioning. If you cannot afford an attorney, you will be appointed for any questioning if you wish. If you decide to answer questions at this time without an attorney present, you have the right to stop answering any time. You also have the right to stop answering any time until you talk to an attorney. Further, you have the right to have an attorney present during any questioning. You understand that?
Yeah.
Okay. Just write the word yes there and sign your name right there, please.
You want something to drink? Like coffee if I have any, or water or something?
Yeah, that would be cool.
What? You tell me.
Coffee.
Let me see if we
If
still
not, I'll take water.
The moment of truth had arrived, and the investigators were already building a rapport with their most solid suspect yet. Only one thing could be said for certain. There was no room for mistakes.
I'm sure I'm going to tell you what this is about before you make up your decision whether you want to talk with it or not. Obviously, we want to talk to you. We have some questions, and a lot of what we talk about has to do with how we're proceeding with other people involved in this, including your wife. So the long and the short of why you are here.
I'm gonna keep it real. You already know because I can tell by the way you're looking at me. You keep looking at me.
No, I keep looking at both of you guys.
I wasn't sure if he was ever going to talk about this case.
I have a warrant for your arrest for murder.
You had to know eventually this was coming.
I understand.
The detectives were completely uncertain of how it was going to play out, but his body language spoke volumes. Then they showed him Maurice's picture and witnessed his body language shift again.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
I know that guy.
Who is it?
I don't know his name right off the hand.
You don't know his name? At first, he tries to deny and doesn't even act like he knows who Maurice is, doesn't even say him by name. But there comes a point, and it's very early on. I mean, his body language to me was very telling from the beginning.
You don't know his name?
No, because he just said his first time before.
So you would know his name then?
I know it's like Maurice or something like that. I don't know his last name or anything.
That's okay. Well, you know him as Maurice.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's something more that I need to know, now's the time. Okay? So, that being said, do you want to discuss this and give me your side of what occurred here?
To them, there was a look of surrender, and they were ready to use it to their advantage. So what really was giving away Charles's dark secrets?
His shoulders were slumped. He was pretty much sitting forward. I just felt like he was on the verge, almost from the beginning, to just tell us. I got to believe that this is weighed on you like a ton of bricks. And I've got to believe that over this time period, Charles, you probably have been feeling like you're drowning, okay? Trying to get this off your chest. But the only way to do it is to now come clean about it. I could see it on your face.
They felt they had finally seen through Charles's facade and were on the verge of the biggest breakthrough in the case.
And that's when I thought we really had a chance to get a confession.
Understand something, Charles. You need to be truthful with us. What happened that night?
I could see it on his face and in his body language, and that I could tell he's probably been drowning from, the guilt of what's happened. Let's start from the beginning.
And then he fell right into the detective's interrogatory strategy.
He invited me over.
Okay. In what way? Explain, how did he invite you? He called you on the phone?
Yes.
Okay, so he invited you over?
Yes, sir.
And then you walked there?
Yes.
Okay, then what? At that point that I had leaned in, I knew he was going to tell us what happened. Then what?
I wouldn't do the things he wanted to, so he regressed me. And then I tried to move away from him. And I just got scared, and he grabbed me, and then he tried to get me first.
What do you mean he tried to get you? You gotta try to be as descriptive as you can.
Okay, here's a steak knife.
He got a steak knife, and he tried to get me with a steak knife, and I grabbed it away from him, and I went like this, and
Where did you get him?
Like right here.
What happened after you got him there?
And I had a drag him. I drove him off to the next room because I didn't know what to do. I was scared.
The story that he gave was that of self-defense, something the detectives were certain it was not. However, there was a reason they would let him weave his story.
At that point, because he was talking and we were still getting a good amount out of him as far as linking up all the pieces of evidence, I didn't challenge him too hard on that because, to me, it was already laughable to conclude that this was a self-defense issue. So you got him here?
Yes,
That's
he kept trying to grab me, and I kept trying to push myself off of him. And then I grabbed him like this to push myself away from him.
Did you stab him more than once?
No, so I didn't. I grabbed him by his neck like this.
You didn't stab him any more times than
I went like this.
In the course of Muscatello telling his version of what occurred, he claims that he stabbed him once in the throat, and I believe I asked him, "Are you sure you only stabbed him once?" He goes, "Well, I may have accidentally, came back across and got him across the neck." Well, Maurice's body had multiple stab wounds, multiple slices across his neck. His version of what he was telling us didn't match Maurice's body.
However, the detective would go all the way into the Charles show, and they leaned in as they mentally sorted his truths from his lies.
Did he just stop moving at that point?
I don't know if he did or not. I just threw a sheet over him and I left.
That's not the full story.
What about your shoes?
The shoes, they didn't have nothing on them.
Are those the same shoes?
No.
What kind of shoes did you have?
I had a pair of Converse on.
Converse, like Chuck Taylor's?
Yes.
So nobody came over, you were there by yourself, there was nobody else in the apartment with you, it was just you and Maurice?
Yes.
There's something we still got to clear up. The TV.
Yes. one of the things I got. So it's actually papers for. I got a TV.
So you walked out with the TV?
Yes.
The truth was that Charles's version of events lacked any clear motive, and from the police's perspective, they couldn't accept the self-defense's claim. However, without a solid motive, they were left with no choice but to press him further and focus on the inconsistencies in his story.
How come you never came to tell us what happened? Did you just hope
Well,
that no one
I
ever
had to
found
think
out?
that we were eventually going to know, because we just have to wait for the lab stuff to come back, you know?
I know.
We got the
I want to know
cane.
CSI to know that.
I'll be completely honest with you, Charles. I don't know where this is going to end up at the moment, okay?
I watch enough of these stories to know where it's going to go.
However, that was all the detectives had to make the strongest case against Charles. The question was whether it would hold in the court for what it truly was, the most brutal stabbing for a television set. Charles Muscatello was arrested and pleaded guilty to murder, aggravated burglary, and aggravated robbery. When his sentence came, it was a success for the investigative team who had worked hard to find justice for Maurice. In March 2019, he was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 20 years, making him eligible for release in 2038. Charles is currently incarcerated at Trumbull Correctional Institution in Ohio.
It was very satisfying, and I know it was very satisfying for Detective Miller because he knew he was going to be retiring.
By the time Charles was sentenced, Detective Miller had retired, but he left knowing he'd solved his final case, proudly passing the baton to another officer who was involved in Maurice's case.
I took his position in the detective bureau when he retired. And I know that this case was very important for him to solve. Those are things that happen in law enforcement that people don't realize how much it does mean to us.
I'm glad that we were able to bring him justice. For Maurice's family to have closure, you know, his family lost him, but at least they can know that the person that was responsible for his death was brought to justice.
Even years of Maurice's absence failed to wash out the memories that his friends held. Although the detective's end was satisfactory, his friends' was that of a mixed bag of regret and a final goodbye.
If I had to use words to describe Maurice, he was nice, easygoing, friendly, cheerful. He was always smiling. If Maurice was in front of me now, I would say that if I had known what was going on, I would have did something to help you. You know, we are supposed to help each other. So that's what I feel we should do. And to tell him to gain a couple pounds so he wouldn't blow away in those heavy winds.
As the officers had mentioned earlier in the case, Charles didn't seem like the type to commit such a brutal murder. Yet, when it came to interrogation, he broke down easily, further complicating their understanding of him. He did not look like an experienced killer, but then he did kill Maurice in the most heinous manner. Was it really for a TV set, or was there a hidden secret the investigators would never learn? Let us know in the comments section below. And if you found today's video interesting, please consider subscribing to our channel, hit that like button, and share our videos. Also, if you have any crime story that you would like us to cover, leave us a message in the comments section below.